Becoming a social entrepreneur might be one of the best things that might happen in your life. But it also has a dark truth, or at the very least, a side effect, a trade-off that is very relevant to know, because otherwise it might not become a dream come true, but rather it might be a nightmare. And let me tell you why. But let's get it started first with the good things. I mean, becoming an entrepreneur per se, it's very wild and very exciting, to be honest. You learn so much. Every day is a new day. Also, if you end up becoming a social entrepreneur, which means having a positive impact in society and the planet, well, it's much more, I would say, purpose driven than a single entrepreneurship per se. So a social entrepreneur is even better, I would say, than entrepreneurship, as you're trying to solve one or a couple of humanity's greater challenges, obviously from your area of influence, which might be very limited, but still, you're a droplet in an ocean, and still you're trying your best to solve that issue. And that's extremely passionate again and purpose driven, and it's very intrinsic, not only extrinsic, as many entrepreneurs have that also kind of motivation, but intrinsic motivation of feeling good about yourself, about the value you bring to society and the planet, and trying to help somebody and so on. It's extremely rewarding. And also being an entrepreneur per se, it's also very, very rewarding, such as being your own boss. Also, as again, learning so much about so many things that you might have never expected to learn, and so on. So the list is, I mean, we can go on the whole day. But maybe someone hasn't told you yet that being an entrepreneur, a social one, has also many trade-offs. Of course, you might watch in other YouTube videos and also in blogs or ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on, the risk of becoming an entrepreneur. And this goes from capital, so your money that you have, of course, you're taking some risk. It depends the business that you start, right? One thing would be to start a new product, which of course you need to some capital, although others might be service-led, which it's not that much about the capital costs that are pretty high at the beginning, but rather something that could be worse, which is your time, since your time cannot be recovered. And of course, those are legitimate risks, also market-driven risks, which basically means that the market, your potential customers, the regulations and so on, might not want to buy your product or your service in the long run, medium run, because of the disruptions that happen in the market. Also, competitiveness. I mean, you most likely might not operate alone, and if you do, you might start a new market, which will be a nightmare at the beginning, as almost nobody will be interested in your product and service. And if there's somebody that it is, you still need to build that customer loyalty in the long run. So these are classical examples of the risk and the trade-offs of becoming an entrepreneur. But becoming a social one, it's even harder. It's twice as much. Because most likely, it will be much more difficult because of it's inherent in the social entrepreneurship. Why? Well, basically, because theoretically, an entrepreneur or a business might only consider the shareholders or creating only economic value. But again, theoretically, as a social entrepreneur, you're also creating value not only to your shareholders and having your finances that are sound enough to run the business, but rather also generating value to society and the environment, and in the case of a business, to all stakeholders. So having a stakeholder governance. And that's at the beginning. As of today, much harder. Again, of course, there might be somebody such as like Patagonia that might tell you otherwise, but it's the exception that proves the rule. Because fostering a purpose-driven organization and such an economy, a sound economy, a triple impact economy, much harder at the beginning because you might be facing challenges that a normal entrepreneur might not face. For example, if you try to generate positive value to society and the environment, you might miss many other opportunities that might be coherent, correct in the mind of an entrepreneur, but as a social entrepreneur, you will disregard them. Because, for example, you might provide a consultancy service to a fossil fuel industry. That's going a bit to the extreme, but also could be to a normal organization. But your business model was only to provide sustainable consulting services. Or your traditional consulting services were focused on NGOs, benefit corporations, sustainable companies, and so on. So you might say no to 95% of the potential customers. So that's one side. The second one is the mission lock, which basically means that if you state your purpose as an organization, if the articles of the association of the company, if you have one, if you're starting one that's even less clear, then in the long run, it might get diluted and it might be extremely hard to accomplish that sustainability purpose in the long run, as market dynamics might switch. Or basically, the idea that you had at the beginning might not make sense in sustainability terms in the long run, because sustainability changes as well. 70 years ago, a laundry machine might be considered sustainable in some countries today as well. Now we take it for granted. It's not an issue anymore. You might say, yes, of course, you could make the laundry machine much more efficient and so on. Yes, but that's an operational perspective rather than a business model one, because you might not be solving a concrete issue to a concrete stakeholder in generating positive value to society and the environment. It's rather diminishing the potential negative externality that you have both in the environment and to society, including your employees, the community, and so on. But imagine you become a laundry entrepreneur 70 years ago, and let's imagine that sustainability was a main thing back then. I mean, if the company survived 70 years, today, you're no longer considered a sustainability entrepreneur. Yes, of course, you could repurpose the mission lock of the organization and the whole vision of the company and to become the most sustainable laundry machine company in the world, to upcycling, recycling to the next level. And well, yes, maybe in that case, yes, you might be right. It was possible and it is still possible for that industry. But the hurdles that the company had to go through and the entrepreneur that became one 70 years ago until today, I mean, that's a very hard pathway. Not to mention all the other risks that you might be taking, the time you're investing, your mental health, and so on. And this was a silly example from a well-established industry. Imagine something much more revolutionary or something that doesn't exist yet. Or maybe it's very easy for us to understand the example that I mentioned before, because we take laundry machines for granted, but it might have not been the case 70 years ago. I don't even know, really, to be honest. So that's a hardship, really. And this is one silly example. But from my experience, for example, I've been working for six years, a bit more, between 6 and 7, in the social economy, from universities and academia to working with multinational startups, public policy, and so on. And it's very hard today. It's the minority of new entrepreneurships are focused on the social economy, and I mean, it's very hard, and I can tell from my experience. I left my job some months ago, and I was working in a very well-established organization, in purpose-driven one, and so on, and I decided to become a social entrepreneur. It's hard. It's really hard. So, of course, I mean, I would do it again, and again. I've no doubt about that. But still, I still have thoughts coming up to my mind. Sometimes I'm saying, oh, well, was that a good choice? Was the best decision of your life? Because maybe it was the worst decision of your life. Time will tell. I'm very optimistic. I'm pretty sure it was the best decision of my life, or one of the best ones. Not only because, what I do today is a dream job, is Disneyland, but also because of the learnings and the experience that is behind, and especially because I have fun, so much fun. I could die tomorrow, and of course that's not the mentality I take every single day for every single decision I take, but still, life is very short, and for me it's absolutely no problem to take this decision, and of course facing some risk, and I would say many more risks, or at least difficulties of becoming a social entrepreneur from the theoretical side. But maybe to end with a point of view that is pretty optimistic, at least in my opinion, is that actually it's much easier to become a social entrepreneur. Why? Well, the entrepreneurship side, we already talked about it. But the social one is because to me, there was no other option. I couldn't become a typical entrepreneur because to me, generating value to society and the environment, and if one day I create a company, a stakeholder governance one, so a purpose-driven organization, was really the only option. I couldn't have tolerated within myself to become a typical entrepreneur. I'm not undermining the efforts that a typical entrepreneur might have. Of course, there are many challenges, and I applaud every single entrepreneur out there. But still, becoming a social entrepreneur for me was the only option, and the one that makes me feel not only very calm, but also very optimistic about my future and about the future of any social entrepreneur out there, including maybe you, or maybe one day, who knows. So if you like this kind of content, do not hesitate to subscribe to the channel, and as always, enjoy life, embrace your curiosity, and be the change you want to see in the world. See you in the next optimistic adventure.